you can see dashboard. So within dashboard, this is your specific numbers for the week. We can see 7 days out, right? We can move it over here. We can see that, we had 17 calls, one inbound, three were missed. We can see 29 outbound, zero inbound, two were missed, and all of the stats. So the highest ranking one is going to be actually the one that is going to be the set of the bar height. And then we can see here vertically the days at the bottom. Blue is for outgoing, green is for inbound, and red is for outbound. Over here, we can see a ratio, and obviously, based off of this pie chart, we can see that we're doing a lot more outbounds than inbounds, but we can see that missed calls are larger than inbounds. So this gives us an idea of that for ourselves. We can change that to today's numbers really quickly. We can change that to yesterday's numbers. And we can also change that to the numbers for this month. And we can also change it for last month as well, or a custom range. The great thing about this is we can quickly jump into the stats for what are the amount of calls for an individual, for the entire team, or for the entire history. So we can see that we have a high of 29 calls. So when we're looking across the board, we can see, how each individual rep is doing by dropping into their own number here. We can see if anybody has made any calls at all. And what we can do is change the data so that way it's for an individual, or we can see for all the entire team. So when we change it to all. So this is a quick way that you can be able to take a look at how the team's doing, how many inbounds are going out, how many outbounds are going out, and take a look at the entire stats. So we can see that at a high, we have 61 calls, and that's been the biggest day of the entire system so far. As we get a better baseline, we'll have more and more data. So we can see that, out of the entire all, we had a percentage of missed calls from all of the data that's available. So, 114 within this 1 month period since we just started using the system. But based off that, we can see if like the data from yesterday, how many calls were done yesterday. Like 153 were done yesterday. So what you do is at this point, you click download. What's going to happen is you're going to get the download report. Once you open this download report, you're going to be able to see all of the data now for this period of time that you selected, right? Because we did the report for yesterday, which was the 4th. So it ran it for the 4th. And what we can see is that we can see how many inbounds, how many outbounds for the specific day. And what we can tell is, 29 outbounds, 62 outbounds, 12 outbounds, 32 outbounds. What is the duration of the call? How long were they, right? So like the 20 minutes of talk time, 44 minutes of talk time. John had 50 minutes of talk time, 7 minutes of talk time, right? How many came in, right? 1, 2, 4 missed calls, right? So 2 missed calls here. Randy had missed 3 calls. Joseph got missed 6 calls. So, Joseph made 4 calls. He talked for about 14 minutes. And of those, so, pretty much he missed 6 and he did 4 out and he didn't take any ins when they actually rang and came in. So, this tells us that 2 of these calls were made after hours, right? So after his normal hours. That's why it's important for us to know, right? And then 2 of them were not picked. And then we can see that, also this happened for John, that he got calls. We can also actually see it right here that Randy got calls that were not picked after hours as well. So that's some data. And then what we can tell is when we go into here, we have data separated out for each individual rep of those numbers that we saw ahead. So that is that section for the report that comes from here. So if you make this report last 30 days, then when you click the download, it's going to actually provide you with that total 30-day view there. Okay. Other things to look at is once you do change that, these stats will change as well. Okay. So there's something to look at. If you want to take a look at how an individual line is doing, is like the live mailer inbound, this is a queue line. So instead of individual stats for the individuals who are the sales reps, this would be for more of a line. So we can see when I was testing it, 7 inbound calls, 1 inbound call, 1 inbound call. So what we can tell is that this line is getting calls. Other analysis over here, how many calls are coming in after hours. So I'm seeing that a lot of calls are coming in after hours. I can see which calls are coming in here. I can see which ones were inbounds, how many were missed. So there's a lot of great data that you can go through here and take a look at. You can see an analysis of when the last person was on, when the last call, how many inbounds, outbounds that they've done in that period. So, if we really want to see, somebody's activity for today, we're going to drop that today. That's going to bring these numbers down that we saw. And we can see, Brandon did 2 inbounds, how many outbounds, he did 50, he did 3. So really great way to look there. And then these are the missed calls, so this is a great opportunity to go back and call all of these leads, clean them out, and make sure to get rid of them. And then, here's the voicemails. So you can go ahead and click here for view. You can listen to the voicemail. Once you're in the voicemail, you can download it, you can play it, you can add your notes here. So once that's handled, you're going to be able to make sure the voicemails. And then here's the disposition report. So this is why it's so important as the reps to be able to set for the team what is the dispositions, and then you would set it for this time period here, or you can do it up here at the top. But once you're down here, it turns into a bar. So if we look at the dispositions, right, we can see that one of them was scheduled. If we go and download this report, we'll be able to come back, take a look at this report, and see who was the team member, what was the disposition, and what showed up, as well as what was the call and what were the notes, what was the disposition, and which calls were set to the not interested disposition. If we come here, right, we can see that that was the not interested one. So if we do view all, right, we can come now to the call log. From the call log, we can search by disposition also and make sure that we download the entire report by going to export. And then we can make sure it's today and then all team members as well. And when we do this, we'll have a much larger report for all of the call logs individually. So that's how you get to the call logs. That's how you see the dispositions. And that's how you're able to get also to the recordings right there. So once you're in the back end, right, we were over here on dashboard. We were taking a look at, live calls, recent calls, calls in queues, calls being monitored. So if you're in here now, besides the dispositions, you can see the disposition report, how many dispositions by you for each one. And then that would be your disposition report. If you want to see a much greater disposition report, you can go to the call log, which I just showed you in the last video. Also, this is a great tool we can see for all numbers and for all members at all times that our earliest call came in at 8 on a Wednesday. Most of our calls are coming in about 1, right? So if we put our hand over here, we can see our busiest time is 1 o'clock. So nobody should be going to lunch at 1 to 2 o'clock, right? These are amount of calls coming in. So let's take a look about the inbound calls so we can make a better assumption, right? So inbound calls now, are starting to warm up from 12 to 2, right? And then there's a drop off between here. right? If we look at outbound calls, right, look at our outbound calls. There's a lot in the morning, and there's a lot in the second half as well, 1 o'clock prime time. So 1 o'clock is our busiest time right now in the business. And you can change that by teams, or you can go to the individual line. So let's go to John. We can see that John's busiest at 2 o'clock, right? We can see he is, you know, least busiest early on. So he does a lot, he did, if we want to break it down by hour, right? He did 7 outbound calls at 9. He did 5 at 9 o'clock. He did 10 at 10. He did 14 at 11. He took his lunch, right? At the busy, almost the busiest time. And then, 9 calls at 10 to right now. So, this is an easy way for you to take a look at some of the stats by the hour. And, we can really dive down into this and take a look at, like, how many were missed, right? One call on a Monday at 11 and one call on a Tuesday at 3, right? If we really wanted to deep down in this and look at, outbounds, like we did, here we go. This is the data for the person. So heat map's really cool. Busy hours is really cool. You can also download this into a report, take a look at it, get used to it. You can see the breakdown of how many hours, are the shifts. You can see, how many total calls. You can see, comparatively, where he's at, and so the more data we get, the better we'll be at looking at this as more and more we use the system. So that's how you can look at a lot of the stuff on the homepage. One thing to also consider is if you go over here to call logs, now that we're in call logs, this is going to be one of the best places for you to find your stats. You can drop down between phone numbers or notes or dispositions. So if we wanted to do a disposition, which we can see that that's over here for scheduled, right? We can see right away one of the dispositions. We can listen to the recording. We can download the recording. We can see the notes right here. We can listen to the notes and add the information. We can see that the information was sent to Zoho and it was logged. So what was the duration? What was the notes? Everything right within here. So once we're in this system, we'll also be able to go to missed calls, for all time. So what I recommend as a manager is as you're going through this, you should have nothing in this view at all. Every call needs to be archived. Once you call them, you have the note, followed up, you archive it, you give this to the representative, then you clean this up and archive this. So that way you should, at the end of the day, have no missed calls. Everybody should have been at least reached back out to, and then you'll know what's going on in each file. Then you have a list for your voicemails, and you also have a list for inter-team calls from there. So that's pretty much the back end of how to be able to use JustCall.